ZJ Czupor, welcome to the Rocky Mountain Writer Podcast.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
You bet. And it's kind of a cool episode because this is number 300 of our podcast, and your number came up, and here we are talking to the president of Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers. So it seems like it's fortuitous and good timing.
Well, I'm honored. I think that's great that you've had so many podcasts. I mean, that's you've done this for several years now, and I know you've talked to obviously 300 people, and they're all very interesting. And now that you're doing it on video, I think that's even cooler. We get to see the faces too.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I mean, we've had repeat guests for sure. Maybe I would say occasionally we've had a guest who's been on 4 or 5, maybe 6 times. I'd have to look at the record. So, but it is, just looking back, I'd like to know, and I should go back and look and see how many different individual voices we've heard from. But it's been an absolute blast talking with all the members of RMFW and all their various journeys, and occasionally presenters at our workshops or presenters at our meetings. So it's been a variety, but everybody involved cares about one thing, and that's writing fiction. And that's
right. Yeah, that's great.
So, very cool. So the main fun news we've got from your world is a recent signing with literary agent Terry Wolf from AKA Literary Management, I think, if I've got the name of the company.
That's correct. That's right.
And so we want to talk to you about that. And the other things, just to let folks know, we'll talk to you about your first half year or so as RMFW president and some of the things that are happening as we get back into a regular flow. And then we'll talk about the conference as well and just what's coming up at Colorado Gold in September. But let's start with, I've known you, I don't know, for what, 10, 12 years?
Oh, at least, if not more.
I remember meeting you. We sat down next to each other at a day-long event that RMFW used to put on, these day-long education events in the spring. And this was downtown at some meeting room. And you and I sat down next to each other, and we just started chatting, became friends. And I don't know if you remember that day, but I do. And you've been such a steady, friendly presence in Rocky Mountain Mystery Writers community and Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers community for so long. So,
well, thank you. I think, I remember that day too. And I knew of you when you were in journalism at the Denver Post. And I was doing public relations. I had my own business for 30 some years. But I remember meeting you at that conference, and I had been thinking about writing a novel, but I didn't know how I could fill 300 pages because I'd written screenplays, but had never written a novel. But I had this idea that I thought really needed to be a novel. And I remember asking you how you wrote yours. And I'll never forget, your advice was get into a critique group, and within a year, you'll have it done. And I thought, oh, well, that makes sense. So I did join a critique group, and they were just so helpful. And a year later, I had a first draft lousy novel done, or lousy first draft. And I've since completed 3 complete novels. So yeah, I hearken back to that a lot, and just that advice that you gave me really got me going.
Oh, good. Well, that's great. I'm kind of unusual because I know critique groups are very, very effective for lots and lots of writers, but I've never been a regular critique group person. I've dipped in and out of them, and I know the power of having trusted friends that can give you good advice on, for me, the full book. I've never been able to take individual chapters or works in progress to a critique group and get feedback on a regular basis. Part of that was just raising a family and just not having the, at least for me in my schedule, having that time in the evenings. But I'm glad it worked for you. I was passing along advice that I didn't really necessarily take myself, but I know is true for lots of others. So.
Well, and it's helpful in many respects. The tricky part is the folks in the critique group are only seeing about 10 pages a week. and they're not seeing the big picture of the story you're trying to tell. So, you have to take that in with a grain of salt. But in terms of making sure those 10 pages sing and make sense, great help, really great help.
Yeah. So which of the 3 novels that you've completed was the one that Terry picked up, or did she pick you up as a client just based on all your writing?
Well, actually, let me go back before then.
Yeah.
You might recall when you were president of Rocky Mountain Mystery Writers, we had a summer event in Colorado Springs at one of our members' homes, and we had a panel, and the beautiful summer evening, and we're sitting out on the deck, and on that panel was Terry Wolfe, and also Kevin Wolfe, who had just published his first novel, and Chris Goff. And
Right.
I knew Kevin from, we were in the same critique group, so I'd known him for a long time. And I knew Chris through Rocky Mountain Mystery Writers. But that was the first time I had seen Terry. And there was something about her and the way she spoke that was so genuine and honest, and so real that I fell in love with her that night. I just thought she was just so genuine. And I thought, man, if I could ever find an agent like her, that would be a home run. So she was always in the back of my mind. And so when I finally finished this one novel, well, actually, even before then, I sent her a novel that was finished. I had hired a professional editor and had taken as far as I thought I could go. It was, I would call it a mystery thriller. It was about a cop in LA. And Terry said, well, it was okay. And this was during the period of COVID. She said, I'm not sure I can really sell this right now. So I said, okay. And she said, do you have anything else? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, I do. And I had just finished another novel and had hired an editor to look at that as well. So when I sent that to her, she said, oh, I love this. And I thought, yeah. And so that started a whole series of long telephone conversations. We had about 3 2-hour phone calls.
Wow.
We'd only scheduled 30 minutes, but they went for 2 hours each.
Wow.
And they were just delightful. And we talked about.
And this was all about the story and making it better.
All about the story, all about me, all about her,
Okay.
How we would work together, that kind of thing. So I was getting really strong signals that, we might have something here. And this was back in, I would say, December of last year. And then in February, we actually signed the contract.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
And I should add, I also gave her a proposal for a nonfiction book that's based on the mystery minutes I write each month. And she also loved that. And so she's going to be shopping that as well as my novel.
Okay, that's great. So what is the novel? She didn't like the LA Cop one. What's the working title of the one she did like, and what's the rough setup?
Well, the working title is called Elrod. And it's an 18-year-old boy growing up in the middle of Kansas. And he lives at home with his mother. And on weekends and after school, he works on the cattle ranch with his grandfather. And he comes home one night and finds his mother brutally murdered. Echoes of In Cold Blood, if you will. And at the funeral, this exotic woman shows up that he had never seen before. And he discovers very quickly that this is an aunt he never knew he had. And so she takes him back to LA with him. And so he goes through this identity crisis about who he is and who is his family and so on. And it's about a search for home, basically, without giving away too many more details.
Wow. And it's did you say it's contemporary, or did you say it's
actually it's based in 1980, and it's the background is the 1980 farm crisis, when farmers and ranchers had a terrible time. Many farmers went bankrupt, and ranchers, some committed suicide, some just walked away. It was a rough time.
Very rough time. I was a reporter back then and covered some of that in Nebraska more than Kansas, but it was brutal.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What got you onto that story in particular? What inspired that?
Well, it's interesting. I was driving home from critique group one night and the word Elrod popped into my head. I thought, okay, who's this? And I decided, well, his last name has to be Presley, but with two S's. And so then I just began asking a bunch of questions like, who is Elrod Presley? And then the story started developing that way.
Wow. How long have you been working on Elrod?
I would say off and on for about 3 years, but in the last year, I devoted all my time to that. And then after the editing was done, yeah, and I sent it off.
And what is the status then of the LA Cop one?
Well, I don't know. I'll have to have another conversation with Terry about that. See if she thinks it's still marketable. Meanwhile, I have another one that's finished and I'm just rewriting and editing it as well. So I'm hoping to keep the pipeline going,
Yeah. What's the overview of the third?
The third is, well, you might appreciate this. This is a hotshot New York business reporter. And he gets the interview of a lifetime with this big business guru who never gives out interviews. He's kind of like the J.D. Salinger of business. And he goes to San Francisco to his home to interview him for a weekend, unknowing that this guru has invited 3 of his old college friends to come the same weekend to kind of reunite their old hot tub club, and which they used to do in college, where they'd get together and, talk about things in school and life in general. So this kind of screws up the journalist's plans for the weekend, and he ends up finding out more about the consultant through his friends than he does from the consultant. And then there's a murder involved, there's a love triangle, a couple of funny characters. There's a lot going on in that one.
Sound like 3 very different novels.
They are.
Yeah. So, like I said, I've known you for a long time. We've been to, I don't know how many meetings and conferences together, and we've had those kind of little moment chit chats. How's it going? What's happening? What are you doing? And you correct me if I'm wrong. Feel free to do that because I'm often wrong. But you seem like somebody who was just quietly, calmly determined to continue to pursue traditional publishing path. That was the path you were on, and you're going to put your head down and keep working and keep networking. And no matter how long it took, that wasn't really the issue. There was a decision you made at some point that you knew that was the right path for you.
Yeah. Well, I struggled with that decision. It would be easy, I think, to say, okay, I'm going to pack it in and just self-publish. But, that's not an easy road either. You've got to do a lot of work. You've got to do a lot of promotion. And, you have to kind of hit lightning, I think, with self-publishing as well. But what made the difference for me is I went to a conference in St. Simon's Island, Writers Conference, and I met Reed Farrell Coleman, a good friend of yours. And Reed and I really hit it off.
He's an acquaintance. I should be clear. He's an acquaintance. When I saw him in Albuquerque a few weeks ago at Left Coast Crime, I couldn't believe he remembered my name, that kind of thing. But we were around Mystery Writers of America at a national level, and so that was great to get that kind of introduction. And what a force and what a writer he is. Anyway,
yes. Well, you must have made an impression, because when he knew that I was from Denver, he said, "Oh, do you know Mark Stevens?" So anyway, funny story is really good friends of mine live in St. Simon's Island. So my wife and I went down, and their house was literally a 2-minute walk to the conference center. So I get my backpack on every day like a kid from school, and I'd walk over to the conference, and Reed was there. And and this conference center is put on by a religious organization, so no alcohol or smoking was allowed. And he said, man, I don't know how I'm going to get through this weekend. I can't have a drink. I said, well, why don't you come over and have dinner with us? And, you know, my friends have said if I ever met anybody, I was welcome to invite them over. He said, oh, you saved my life.
Wow. Wow.
So Reed came over that night. We had dinner. He came over the next night. We had dinner again. And on the third day, he grabbed me in the middle of the conference and he said, come on, I'm going to take you to lunch. So we went to this barbecue joint. And he said, no, really, seriously, what can I do for you? How can I help you?
Wow.
I know, this was golden.
Yeah.
And I said, well, Reed, I said, here's the thing. I said, I feel like I'm getting close, but I'm not getting any traction. I'm thinking about self-publishing. And he said, oh, hold on. He said, why don't you hold out and go the traditional route? He said, give it a shot. What have you got to lose? He said, if it doesn't work, then self-publish, but you'll get a lot farther, he thought, by traditional publishing. And so anyway, I took his words to heart, and that's what made the difference in my decision-making.
That's great. What a story. Wow. And
Yeah,
that, if I remember correctly, and I remember you telling me about coming back from that and meeting Reed, that was 3 or 4 years ago now.
Yes.
And, you know, even in that time, you could have come to that same fork in the road and said, it's still not working. And I assume all along you've been querying agents and pitching agents, going to conferences and sending out the emails.
Yep. Oh yeah, I'll have a spreadsheet full of rejections.
Any idea how many?
I haven't counted them up, but they're from different things I've submitted, you know, so it's not from one work. But the other thing that Reed said, he also taught at the seminar, and he said, you know, if you're going to be a writer, you got to get your butt in the chair every day and write. He said, can you imagine a fireman waking up and go, oh, I don't feel like working today. And this is what he did. Oh, I don't feel like working today. Cracked me up. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that makes perfect sense. You know, you got to treat it like a job.
It sounds like such obvious advice, but it is just so fundamental to what we do. It's just, yeah.
You have to just write.
Yep. So just for those out there that I'm not trying to pin you down exactly, would you say you've sent out 100 agent queries or pitched 100 agents?
Probably between sending out queries and in-person pitches. Yeah.
Wow.
And as you know, it's lots of ups and downs, because some agents say, yes, I like the idea, send me 10 pages, or I love it, send me your full manuscript. And you think, oh boy, I'm there, I got my foot in the door, and then crickets.
Yeah.
You know, nothing.
Yeah, crickets are terrible. What's also terrible is just some sort of bland rejection that you can't do anything with. There's not enough specific feedback to really engage in a rewrite or do anything different.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
Yeah. So just to ask, is Elrod already out on submission, or can you share any details? And you don't have to, but can you share any details about what the plan is to submit it? And is it getting ready to go out the door?
It's ready to go out the door. It may be out the door. Terry said her thought was she had a couple of editors in mind that she thought might like it. So
excellent.
So I have no news yet. I mean, this was only a few weeks ago. So
yeah. And for those who may know, Terry is sort of well known in Rocky Mountain fiction writers circles and Rocky Mountain Mystery Writers of America circles for her relationship with Margaret Mizushima, who has been a frequent guest on the podcast and has just done extremely well with her Timber Creek Canine series.
Yeah, and she just signed a new contract for her 9th book.
Wow.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, Margaret's really setting the pace out there and just has thousands and thousands of fans.
Yes. Yeah, she's great.
Terrific. Great. Wow. So Elrod may be being read by an editor right now as we speak.
Hope so.
I mean, how does that make you feel, ZJ, that you know, that if you blink and go back to December of 2021 or November of 2021, where you were still at a point of wondering what would ever come of all your hard work, just knowing, at least now, when an editor gives Terry feedback, if it is a pass, you probably have some good information to go on at least.
I would think so. Yes.
So how does it
I
feel?
think so. Well, I'm very excited, very excited. And, in talking to Terry, she was funny. She said, now, this is not going to change your life. It's going to be the same. All you can say is you've signed with a big shot agent, is the way she put it. And that cracked me up. And it's true. I mean, I still go out in the yard and pick up after my dog and take out the trash and go for long walks. And, we still have friends over for dinner, and, life goes on. And meanwhile, there's this whole other thing happening out there that you have no control over.
Right.
So,
yeah. And I don't mean by this conversation to suggest anything around the choice to go indie and the fact that there are plenty of writers who go indie
absolutely.
and who bring incredibly high standards to their approach to indie, that they edit at a high level, their graphics are at a high level, their marketing plan is at a high level, and some of them do catch lightning and are big, enormous successes without question. But for you, the point is you chose this path, and you have reached a major milestone in potentially reaching a publisher and getting a publishing company behind you. And that was a decision you made. And that's, at this day and age, the agents are the gatekeepers to the traditional publishing folks out there. And you literally now have an agent, which is great.
It's incredible in that you're getting validation from a professional, somebody who's got contacts throughout the publishing industry, knows what editors want, and first of all, believes in your work and is willing to get out there and market it. And I do agree with you wholeheartedly that those who do choose to self-publish, they do have high standards, and they're doing very well with it. It's just that, I don't know, I felt like this was the way to go. And maybe it was Reed's influence. I don't know.
Yep.
But,
very good. Well, fingers crossed, ZJ.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, eager to hear. And I, can also just share quickly that my novel that finally sold took 2 years through my agent. So it's not an immediate. The publishers still have lots of choices out there, and they're still getting queried from lots of agents all day long.
Well, and I've been thinking that there's still a lot of factors involved between now and a book getting published, depending on what the editors are looking for and think that what kind of stories will sell, what kind of genre they're submitted to, their whole publishing schedule. I mean, there's so many boxes that need to be checked for this to work.
So true. So true.
So no guarantees.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And it sort of sounds like Terry's keeping you grounded, and she's very grounded in exactly what you saw in that meeting in Colorado Springs. It sounds like she's turned out to be exactly the kind of agent you thought she would be.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every conversation with her has been very grounded. We've had a lot of fun with our conversations, with a lot of laughs, and yet, serious business conversations as well.
Yeah, that's great. Very good. Well, two remaining topics I wanted to touch on. One is just RMFW as a whole,
Sure.
as president. So let's spend a few minutes with that, and then we'll get to the conference. But what have your first 6 months or so been like as RMFW president?
Well, I have been probably more than anything amazed at the high caliber of volunteers that we have. I told the board, I said, since this is my first rodeo with you guys. I'm going to try to kind of stay out of your way, and because you know what you're doing. And I'm fortunate because many of the board members had returned from the previous board. And so there's not a lot of turnover. And everybody's just humming along with their individual programs that they're in charge of. And so they're delightful to work with. And I know they're all hardworking. They have families, they have businesses they're running, and they're also writing, so
Right.
everybody's got a lot on their plate. But anyway, I'm just honored to be part of this organization. We have about roughly 600 members. And, we're trying to keep this thing going that's been built on for years and years and years by others, including yourself when you were president. There's a long history of volunteerism behind this.
Well, it's 100% volunteer-driven organization, as is Rocky Mountain Mystery Writers of America too. But RMFW just continues to thrive, and I think one of the interesting kind of factors in the last few months has been the kind of connection between what used to be the traditionally published authors liaison folks and the independent, and that's been merged back together. So it feels more and more like it's back to being one big family, even if it's horror on one end and young adult on the other, and science fiction over here, mystery, romance. We're all in this together.
Well, and I think we've caught up to where the industry is. The industry is both traditional and non-traditional. Some writers are in both camps.
Right.
So, and even some of the publishing houses are in both camps. So I think it just makes great sense that we're now honoring it as you're a writer, you're a professional writer, whether you're traditionally published or self-published.
Right. Very good. So any big issues you want to flag for us that are coming up from RMFW, or anything you need from the membership?
Well, let me, I made a few notes, so pardon me if I check my notes here.
Yeah.
A couple of things. We have our writers retreat coming up in May 26th and 29th at the St. Francis Center in Colorado Springs, and it's sold out this weekend. We have about over 40 people signed up, and people from throughout the United States. So I think that's very exciting. And I'm looking forward to going down and welcoming everybody. And
oh boy,
I think that'll be really cool. On July 9th, we have our summer party at the bookstore here in Denver. And we'll honor our Writers of the Year finalists. So Carla J., Pam Novak, and Amy Rivers will be there. They all three great people, great writers. And let's see, July 16th, I'm really excited about this. We're going to have a Zoom event with James Lee Burke.
Wow.
Many of you know James Lee Burke. He's a New York Times bestselling author. And he's going to be interviewed by a great Colorado author, David Heska Wanblee Whedon. And David just keeps racking up the awards with his debut novel, Winter Counts. And he has done some interviews with James Lee Burke in the past, and James Lee Burke thinks the world of David. So we're excited that we'll be able to do this. And we're going to co-sponsor this with Rocky Mountain Mystery Writers of America,
Great.
RMFW, Sisters in Crime Colorado, and the Tattered Cover Bookstore.
Wow. What a production.
Yeah. So we just went live with the link on Rocky Mountain Mystery Writers, I think over the weekend. And I've sent that notice around to all the co-sponsoring organizations. And Aaron Mitchell, who does public relations for James Lee Burke, has already posted it on his Facebook website.
Great.
So it's going to be great. It's going to be a 2-hour free event.
Wow.
On July 16th, which is a Saturday, from 2 to 4 Mountain Time.
Fantastic.
And so it's going to be cool.
What an opportunity from a
Yeah.
legend. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic.
So anyway, that's coming up. And then, of course, our conference in September.
Yeah.
And I want to announce we have a new treasurer for Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers. Kim Malik has been a treasurer for a long, long time and done a fabulous job for the organization. And she's decided to apply for an MBA program at University of Colorado.
Oh,
And but we're very fortunate to have Lisa Adams step in as our new treasurer. Lisa is in Rapid City, South Dakota.
oh,
She's an attorney and very familiar with accounting procedures, and she's going to be a general counsel to one of the Native American tribes in South Dakota.
wow.
And she's going to be presenting at the conference also.
That's great. Wow.
So I think we are very fortunate to have her talent joining us as treasurer. And
Fantastic.
the other thing is we're early discussions about revamping our education program. Within Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers, we have the University Online. We have education programs in the West Slope. We have education programs on the Front Range, and we do like a one-day education event during the year. Now we're thinking about doing maybe two next January and June, and looking at a way to better organize all of these educational programs under one umbrella. We'll still have individual chairs and they'll still be members of the board, but I just want to ensure that they're all talking to each other from a program standpoint. And apparently it used to be set up that way, but as people moved on and people changed, and
Yeah.
so
Right.
hopefully this will help us all.
Yeah. Well, the conference certainly looks to be exciting. In fact, it's in a new location and it sounds super spiffy and very inviting. And one thing that sounds appealing to me, at least, is the fact that it'll all be kind of together in the event center. And in the Renaissance, you were kind of having these long hikes between
and three levels, and
so, yeah.
Yeah, I did a walkthrough with Mira and Kate and Kevin Wolf last week. Fabulous facility. It opened in 2016, still looks new. As Kevin said, you can still smell the paint.
Yeah.
And all the conference rooms and breakout rooms are all on one level. It's very airy, a lot of natural light. We even have some outdoor areas where we can have receptions and entertain. So I'm very excited.
Fantastic. Wow.
So
Yeah, that sounds great.
I take my hat off to Mira and Kate for putting all that together. It's a lot of work. It's
a ton of work, and just the details and the number of moving parts is kind of mind-blowing to me. Yeah.
But we're also going to have 9 agents and editors there from around the country. So, which is great because then people can pitch them in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, great. Sounds like things are running well and your steady hand is and for those who are listening to the podcast, not watching, ZJ just wrapped his knuckles on his forehead. But no, I mean, you've brought your steady hand to RMFW, and we all appreciate your stepping up and doing that. My pleasure. Thank you. It's an honor, it really is. Yeah, that's the same way I felt as well. So, well, best of luck to you and to Elrod. And thank you. We hope we hear some great news soon. But in the meantime, ZJ, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast as always. There's one last little piece of business, and that is, as we always do, we like to give our guests a chance to recommend one writer or book or something you've read recently, maybe a big name, could be a Reed Farrell Coleman book, it could be somebody we've never heard of. I'll give you 2. Okay.
because I'm reading both at the same time. Well, the one is James Lee Burke's newest book, Every Cloak Rolled in Blood. And thanks to Aaron, I was able to get an advanced reading copy. And it's being promoted as his most intimate novel. By that, it means there's a lot of references to his daughter who died at a very young age. So I think there's a lot of emotion that comes through in that novel. Well worth reading. The second one is an older novel that I've come across, The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I had never read that. And I actually picked it up for one reason, and that is because right after she finished this novel, she committed suicide, not long after. And her main character in this book, told from the first person point of view, goes from kind of a happy person to a very depressed person. And one of my characters in my novel might echo that. And so I wanted to see how Sylvia handled that from start to finish. And I got to tell you, if you've not read The Bell Jar, it's fabulous. Her voice is so entertaining and driven. I mean, it's hard to put it down.
Wow.
And this is an old book.
Yeah.
An old book. So I highly recommend it.
Those are great suggestions. Fantastic. CJ, thank you so much. We'll catch up with you real soon.
Okay. Good to see you, Mark. Thank you.